you've seen? I know Zade Mincy has kind of shifted over to safety, but I know you spent quite a bit of time with him this season at corner. Just where have you maybe seen him grow just as a defensive back?
I think, from the onset, when you're evaluating all the guys on the back end, we're always trying to find out how we can utilize our strengths, get great players on the field. He's a guy that consistently has shown up, done his job, put in the work, and we're at a point in the season now where we're always trying to find ways to implement, guys, get them out there, get them that experience, and find ways where he can help the team and help us win. So, we made a little transition, a little shift with him, just to see how he kind of took to it. He's a natural player. He makes plays with the ball in the air, and so we're excited about where he is and what he could potentially become and what he's doing right now.
I know it's easy to probably look at his size, but what other traits does he have that maybe makes that switch a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to draw up a DB, you talk about the length, you talk about the size, you talk about the frame that he has, the hips that he has for his size. He's got really good ball skills where he can track it down the field and win in the deep part of the field. So he's still in the developmental stages of his game, like a lot of young guys are, like Bach is, like Xavier Brown is, like a lot of these young players, Red Morgan is. But he's definitely showing promise and upside, and had all this notoriety coming in, and all the talk about how good of a player he was coming in. I think he's living up to that right now.
Does game planning at this point in the season get easier on some level just because there's so much tape on teams?
I understand what you're saying by that when you say easier, but what happens is that you also have a story of yourself out there where really what comes alive in November and December and January football are the details. There's a lot of identity of you're not going to implement a new scheme necessarily this time of the year. You're not going to become a different type of team this time of the year. You're trying to do what you do and do it better. And apply, what we do well and apply it to someone else's scheme. And then also understanding that, there's a book of information out there where we got to always go back to, Western Kentucky, go back to Wisconsin, see all the tape that's out there on us so we can stay ahead of what may occur. So even if a team isn't presenting something, if it hurt us earlier in the season, it may show up again. And there's a little bit more copycat football that comes alive in November and December. So we got to make sure we're staying in front of things, we're solving things before they occur, we're preparing players for things before they happen, and putting our guys in the best position to be successful.
Speaking of the book that's out there on y'all and everybody else, do you use the idle week as a better opportunity to self-evaluate and try to break tendencies just because you got maybe a little bit more of a chance to breathe as you would in a game week?
Absolutely. I think when you look at the bye week, when you look kind of have a forward-thinking approach to it. The bye week is also a time where you can sit guys down in a one-on-one basis and improve the fundamentals and technique of their game. We had some of the DBs that were able to come over to the house. Just from a relationship standpoint, you're always trying to dig into those things to develop trust and always trying to move the needle in that direction. And then from a schematic standpoint, we're looking at, here's one addition that we can make, or maybe one subtraction that we can make where we can focus on, it's time on task right now. If you take an hourglass and turned it upside down, we all have the same amount of time during the week. It's where are you spending your time, and then what kind of return on investment are you going to get out of that time? So if we do add one thing or subtract one thing, we're just trying to stay in that sweet spot so we can line up what we're going to potentially call versus what we can anticipate them being in and get ourselves in the best position to go make plays.
What have you seen from the LSU wide receivers so far? It seems like every year there's one or two receivers that they have that really stand out, and it's the same.
Absolutely. I mean, they're throwing for over 330 yards a game. You see what they're doing in conference play. They rely on that their quarterback Nussmeier. He's got a live arm, 20 touchdown passes, and he's really spreading the field. They can throw it horizontally. They can throw it vertically. They understand the spacing and the timing of the pass game. I think they're down to the details of how they want to move the ball with the quarterback's arm. And when the game's on the line, you look South Carolina, you look at Ole Miss, LSU versus South Carolina, LSU versus Ole Miss. Those games, the quarterback and the receivers had to make plays in the fourth quarter to win the game, and they did those things. So we understand, we got a heavy task in front of us. The volume of throw game that they have and the amount of yards that they're throwing for, we got to put a really good plan together to put ourselves in a position to go out there on the road at LSU. We all know what those night games are like and what it's going to take to go come off with a W on the road.
Doing something on the high school careers of the staff. Can you kind of recap your high school playing career for us?
High school career, I'm a Mesquite, Texas. I grew up in Dallas. I was born in Dallas, Texas, and then we moved to Mesquite in middle school and high school. I went to Mesquite High School. I was fortunate enough to win a state championship at Mesquite High School. We were 15-0, and my senior year, we won it all. And I remember like it was yesterday. Some of my best years. My head coach was Steve Halpin. I still talk to him about once a month to this day. Those relationships and those bonds that you have, and just all the things you go through those formative years of your life. The people that are influential in your life, the people that kind of set you on a path, and the hard work and the discipline and the toughness that it takes, and you learn all those traits, and they never leave you. And then what it takes to just go out there and be a competitor, and what that looks like on a day in and day out basis. I really kind of credit a lot of my high school career and those things just to kind of for the DNA of who I am now.
What positions you play?
So I played running back and corner in high school. Played running back and corner primarily. A sophomore year I was at some running back, and then junior year did a little bit of both, and then really made that full field switch to DB my senior year, and had some good numbers, and was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to Baylor University, and was thankful that they gave me an opportunity to go out there and play. And I wanted to always kind of prove people right. If you gave me an opportunity and you said you were going to bet on me, I wanted to kind of be like Amazon. I wanted to be like an Apple stock and say, hey, I'm going to make sure I prove you right. And just fortunate through my career for the people that have been in my life, and I'm just thankful.
Did you have any teammates that made it to the pros?
You know what? We didn't. And, I thought the team that we had our senior year, was going to be one of the guys. We had 10 guys sign D1 my senior year, and a lot of good college players. I think I was probably one of those guys that just was a really, really good college football player and wanted to stay with the game, and ended up coaching, but didn't have any guys that played professionally on my team. Some guys from the city in Mesquite, at North Mesquite. Terrell Brown was a corner, ended up going to the leagues. I think played like 8 to 10 years at corner in the NFL, played at Texas.
How big is it to have a guy like Devonte Smith, and kind of like how have you seen him improve over the course of the year?
You look at Devonte Smith, and he's really writing a really good story for himself this year. You look at last year's tape; he was a guy that was talked about to us when we came in the door, about a guy that had promise, and I think he's taken advantage of the reps that he's been able to have, and the reps that he's been given in the game. He's turning into a reliable, dependable player when he's out there. He's a guy that can execute. He can cover on the slot. He can has a really good feel for the curl flat and how to play zone with zone instincts, and he's a good communicator on the field. And I think his presence and energy is something that can almost be undervalued, but it's something that can kind of drip over to the other players that are with him, especially when we have some younger guys out there. Just kind of what does it take to go out there and compete and win in the SEC? And I think him, along with Malachi, some of these older guys have been setting a really good example of that.
Seeing your defense, what they did against Missouri, and then seeing some of the struggles that LSU's offense had its last game, do you guys have any sense of momentum coming into this matchup?
I think you're always as good as your last, people say your last game, your last day, your last play. We can certainly learn from things in the past and apply them for future reference, but we know that this is a one-week season, it's a one-week game. I think one moment is probably not enough volume of information to tell the story about any one team. This is a very capable and really, really good football team at LSU. We know they move the ball, they have the stats, they have the numbers, the film tells the story, they have playmakers on the outside, they got a really live and able quarterback, and they have an experienced coaching staff. So we understand what we're up against. We understand going on the road to Baton Rouge, what it's going to take, and we're just really preparing throughout the week and putting ourselves in the right mental space, the right physical space, and taking ourselves on the road to see what it's going to take to go win on the road.
Were you able to see some growth from the younger cornerbacks coming off the bye week? A lot of times that's a big.
I think when you get that bye week and you get a chance to kind of take a breath sometimes and focus on fundamental scheme, technique, you can kind of go backward before you go forward, and go back and reference some older tape, because you don't have the backstop of the next game coming up. So it gives you some space to kind of dig into the details. You can kind of go an inch wide and a mile deep into, hey, let's go back and look at how our technique has evolved from spring to summer to our first 3 games now in the SEC play. And I think those things are helpful for younger players, especially in these younger formative years that they have in terms of how they're developing and how they're growing, and the one-on-one time, always establishing trust, building relationship, opening lines of communication, checking on the mental space of guys. All those things can kind of give you a breath of fresh air when you have that bye week, and guys getting away a little bit and giving themselves some space, and then kind of regrouping a little bit and coming in energized and really ready to attack the last piece of this thing in SEC play.
With those, sorry.
Thanks, guys.